We have with us in the studio Reverend Joseph Tribble, who is the Dean of Resident Life and teaches at the American Baptist College here in Nashville, Tennessee. He's a deep thinker. He also writes Christian education literature for youth and young adults. We have with us, coming from Montgomery, Alabama, on the line, Idongesit Mkpong-Ruffin. She is the Department Chair of Computer Science at Faulkner University in Montgomery, Alabama. A native of Nigeria, she has lived in the States for many years, raising a daughter who became an activist for improved race relations on the campus of Vanderbilt University. And finally, we also have Mr. Damien Durr, Reverend Damien Durr, who is the Minister of Outreach at the Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. He is a prolific preacher and educator with the Marion Wright Edelman's Freedom Schools, and he also designs programs that engage youth and young adults. Hello, Damien.
Good afternoon.
All right. Hello, Idong.
Hello.
All right. And how you doing, Joseph?
I'm all right. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
What do y'all think about the character of Clow? Klaue. It was spelled.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And he was the one that was working with Killmonger.
So Killmonger was using him, seemingly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or in terms of working an agenda, seemingly that Killmonger had planned that process, and I think his character, Cloud's character, being somewhat of a reflection, although he's Africana, but a reflection of the way in which white supremacy has reinscribed itself and embodied itself, particularly with white men, and how their motives and desires for violence and destruction are, continue to perpetuate themselves in our world today. And I think he was obviously a manifestation of that, which is why I think the way people have been obviously dealing with Killmonger without maybe taking into consideration how, and I can't remember the character, the brother character who really wanted to kill him. And right, T'Challa didn't want to kill him, but Killmonger, which is again why they become allies, because Klaue, the character, obviously is a threat, and is intentionally seeking to get the resource to use it in a way that's going to create more violence and more destruction. And so I think that's part of it. In my opinion, that's what he represents, which I think the way in which we've all, I guess, struggled with Killmonger's character in different ways, but I think he is also a reflection because of the trauma, which I think Olusola alluded to before in terms of, the Black family not being stable, but taking into consideration the trauma that he experienced, and then, of course, Killmonger meeting him in military, where the violence, obviously, one learns to become more mechanized towards killing, and then how that violence begets violence in different ways. So I just think he represented that.
Yes, yes. Well, I think one of the things that was said before was not so much the factoid of Black families being unstable, but the presentation of the pathologization, if you will, of Black family. Mm-hmm. All Black families are not alike. And you have, the question is, well, where was Killmonger's mother? Because there are plenty of mothers who have been left single, whether widowed or starting out that way, who have been wonderful mothers who've raised wonderful sons and daughters. And so we didn't see any of that. That's one of the things we didn't see. Maybe that's something we'll see in a sequel. All right. I don't know. What else?
Well, I think with Klaue, I think is very telling that, and I couldn't figure out where he was from. I actually thought he was Australian. In either case, in particular with him being South African, I think is pretty telling, at least for me, on what he represents as they would call a colonizer, and someone who from that very powerful position works to grab for power and grab for resources to continue owning that power. His character obviously is one that is consumed with greed. In greed, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of power. I think it actually burned him up to see the Wakandans in the position that they were in. And that he found it problematic that they were, self-sufficient in every way imaginable, because he was from a context in which the reverse was true. And I think that's what I have to say about Clown.
All right. Thank you.
I think I also echo the fact that the greed and the need for financial compensation and power fuels Clown and also fuels a lot of what makes today's world the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at Africans in diaspora and colonization and all that makes us where we are. And I think that he shows that to the nth degree on how that could go wrong in a lot of ways.
Yes. But
then when I look at Killmonger, which I think is interesting that we never called him by his Wakanda name.
mm-hmm.
When we look at that which he has become because of who he was, I don't think that is an indictment on his mother, that he is a person who has chosen to learn the ways of the world that has been his and unfortunately become it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's necessarily a reflection of his mom as it is a reflection of a person who's chosen to conquer the world he's in. And because of the hatred for that and the search to understand why he was left behind, he becomes that he hates the most.
Yes.
At least that's the way I see him. But I see that the influences of the greed of the places that he's chosen to get what he needs as ammunition, Claw feeds into that.
All right. Because he always knows who he is. He has the tattoo on the inner part of his lip. And so,
right, but the question that he asked is, why did they not take me?
Yes.
That question did not get answered. And that feeds him.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It eats him. It eats him. And I want to back up because as Damien was talking about M'Bako not wanting the power of the Black Panther, the thought that came to me was really the power of tradition and the respect of the past. And because he had been in the environment that he had been, and he had been a part of that culture, and even as they went up into the mountains and they were outsiders as such, they were still a part of this Wakandan culture and the way in which that he still felt free enough to show up and to challenge T'Challa for the title as king. And that's then a comparison, obviously, to Killmonger, who has the Wakandan tattoo. He has the Wakandan blood flowing through his veins, but yet and still, because he did not have the environment, he doesn't have the same kind of respect for the past and for the power of the tradition, and even seeing some of the traditions of the people as being correct. I guess in my mind, it in so many ways, and the way in which I guess this movie works, and talking about the history and the legacy of colonization in all of its varied forms, I think it kind of points back to perhaps even the lack of tradition, the lack of respect for the past, not so much even by the colonizers, but those who have been colonized, and such that that in a way that ultimately ends up being destructive, right, to those people. I mean, that which Killmonger had been exposed to ultimately it killed him, right? In his pursuit of power, his pursuit of overthrowing the Wakandan kingdom and wanting it to be whatever, and that is what ended up, kind of taking him. And had he, you hate to imagine another way, but had he, thought of tradition perhaps in some other ways and had respect for those who had come before him, there might have been a different outcome for his life.
Wow. Well, that is something to go ahead.
No, and I to echo that, and I think that Killmonger's responses being rooted in the lack of feeling valued as a result of the trauma and the separation. And again, the whole question is why wasn't I looked after, and why wouldn't my community take care of me? And I think when we begin to think about Black communities and what happens with young people, and then even the proliferation of why gangs become so popular, is because if they do nothing else, they provide a sense of identity. So when the notion of knowing I'm a Wakandan, but yet I was not taken care of in the same way, because when they both, when T'Challa goes down to see the ancestors, he goes to meet his father and the Black Panthers and the ancestors, and when Killmonger goes, write the story of him finding his father murdered. It's one thing to even lose a parent. It's another thing to find a parent murdered. And the nature of that trauma, and then your disconnect from community, the lack of value that gets internalized, ultimately, I think, causes one not to have a sense of respect and value for traditions and a communal consciousness, because the community chose the community chose to abandon me. And so I think that's something that has to be teased out. And the other part that's a little interesting and somewhat problematic, and I can see how them working with the CIA. So if we're thinking about the real Black Panther, that we know what J. Edgar Hoover did.
Yes.
And we understand that the Panthers were the most feared organization on the face of the in the United States. And so that's interesting that he would be considered a colonizer, but yet he is brought aboard, and of course they still have control, and he serves their interests, if you will. But what does that mean going forward? If he's also in Wakanda, been exposed to this technology, has seen these things, what does that mean to have governmental influence with you? And what is that possibly going to mean for the Wakandans as they go forward? So that's something that I could see that was somewhat problematic. And that may be more akin to the comic book. I'm not as familiar with the comic book series, but the fact that a colonizer would be working with them as well.
Well, I think that this whole thing about Black Panther, there's already a double entendre there, that Killmonger is from Oakland, California, which is where the Black Panther Party started, that when he comes in, something that Victor Leon pointed out was that you have this movie, you have these posters that feature people from a different era. Okay, even the music is, of course, we know hip hop is a universal music now, but it shows you the continuation. This whole movie is not just based in fiction or in history. It comes forward. It's showing us what is the future. It's causing us to ask these questions. What you mentioned, Damien, about the CIA and the FBI being involved in the tearing down of the Black Panther Party in the United States, is that now they're being used for that. He's in that last scene when they're in the United Nations. He's there, and he's there on behalf of the Wakandans. So that is part of what goes forward. We see, well, what's going to be in the next movie? All right, how is the CIA and the FBI going to, or is he now divorced from, and being able to use his own knowledge for the Wakandans? How this affects us spiritually. First of all, whenever you're affirmed, that self-esteem piece, that I am human. This is what this movie says. we're human. Okay, T'Challa is the first superhero that was birthed in humanity. That just reminds me of Jesus Christ, okay? That Jesus Christ came born of a woman. That's what the scripture says all the time, right? So we've got this, narrative that kind of goes side by side with some things that we know as people who went to Sunday school, as people who go to church, who in pulpits or what have you, teaching others. The movie kind of makes us think, all right, that our survival, our flourishing, if you will, God has already put it in us. Okay, God had already put that in. All that meteor had come from outer space, wherever it was. God created all that too, and gave those people exactly what they needed to be human and to be flourishing, people. Now, on the last day, yesterday was the last day of Black History Month, and the Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon featured people talking about what Chadwick Boseman's portrayal of Black Panther meant to them. One woman lifted up the fact that Boseman had attended the HBCU, that is the historically Black college or university, Howard University, HU. Ooh, that's my alma mater, of course, we didn't figure that out. Okay, that he is he's a graduate of our university, and several people who came to the Tonight Show last night, when they met him, they proclaimed him as king. One gentleman admitted to having seen the movie 4 times in the course of 2 weeks. The movie's been out 2 weeks. He's seen it 4 times. He said, I do have a life, that's what he says. But he's seen it 4 times. A mother told how her son's childhood was being defined by President Obama and now Black Panther. That's quite something, isn't it? That your life, I grew up in, we were happy to get John Kennedy, you know what I'm saying? Now we got children whose lives are being defined by President Obama and Black Panther. In this time that we've had together, I've learned a new quote and about utopia from Toni Morrison, which I'm probably not going to be able to find. Oh, yes, it is. It says, all utopians are defined by people who are not there. So as we think about our lives in the kingdom of heaven, if you will, the kingdom of God, who are we trying to? Jesus came and he's trying to include everybody. He wants to heal the sick and free the oppressed. So who is not here in our realm of being, taking care of one another, the nature, how nature fits into, how the earth, fits into what we need to be healed from. I hope you go see the movie again. I plan to go see it again. I will purchase the movie when it comes out so that my sale will be included in the final result. You all get that, right? The bigger the total, the more likely we will get more movies that represent Black people as hopeful, inspirational, wise, competent, worthwhile, and super intelligent human beings. Remember, as one woman on The Tonight Show said, art can change the world. And from a United Methodist perspective, we are all about the transformation of the world through Jesus Christ. Amen?
Amen.
Wakanda forever.